You're watching the Urban Debate on Mirror now. I'm Faye D'souza. Thank you for joining us. Here is the very simple math that has been placed before us by the RBI. If you'll remember, during demonetization, 15.41 lakh crore rupees was demonetized. Currency was demonetized out of our system. 2 years and 10 months later, the RBI has finished counting the money that came back in. 15.28 lakh crore rupees has come back in. That's a shortfall of 10,720 crore rupees. I also want to remind our viewers that apparently district central corporate banks are yet to fully submit all of the money that they had collected at the time. And also some money is expected from Nepal's citizens and financial institutions. So that amount might go down even further. Now this is at 99.3%. So 99.3% of the currency that was demonetized out of our system has come back. What does this mean? Was demonetization a success at all? Joining me on the show right now, Mr. P. Chidambaram, former finance minister. Mr. Chidambaram, good evening and thank you for joining us live here on Mirror Now. You've tweeted about this morning as well. Do you believe demonetization was a complete failure?
It's a complete disaster and an absolute failure. Not one of the objectives that was spelled out on November 8, 2016 was achieved. In fact, I had predicted on the next day that none of the objectives will be achieved.
Mr. Chidambaram, a couple of days ago, there was a story that came out into the press that there was apparently a committee headed by Veerappa Moily with a draft report on demonetization. This was the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Have you had the opportunity to read through that report? Do you know what is in it? And is it true it has been stalled by members of Parliament?
I'm not a member of the committee, and therefore I have no access to the draft report of the committee. All that I know is what the newspapers report. I sincerely hope that the parliamentary committee members act in a non-partisan manner. Privately, even BJP members tell us that demonetization was a failure and they are unable to answer their constituents why the government did demonetization. I have not come across a single economist who has a good word to say about demonetization.
There's source-based information that tells us that the report pegs the loss to GDP at 1%. Do you believe 1% is a fair estimate of the kind of loss the country has incurred because of demonetization?
No, the numbers show that the loss is 1.5%. What was the GDP growth in 2015-16 before demonetization? And what was the GDP growth in 2017-18? In those 2 years, over a period of 2 years, GDP declined by 1.5%, and that is 2.25 lakh crore. In fact, you will recall that I had estimated that the loss will be 1.5%, and Dr. Manmohan Singh had estimated it may be as high as 2%.
But the argument that comes from the government right now is that in combination with GST and all of the other measures that the government has been taking, the accountability in the system has gone up, the number of taxpayers have gone up, the number of companies or shell companies have been weeded out of the system. And so in the long term, India is actually better for it. Do you agree?
Have other countries not achieved digitization? Have other countries not identified shell companies? Have other countries not increased the number of filers? Did we not increase the number of filers between, say, 1997, when income tax rates were sharply reduced, and 2015? So all this could have been achieved through other means. Tell me one country in the world which achieved objectives like digitization, increasing compliance with income tax by demonetization. This is trying to justify an absolutely foolish act. The same results could have been achieved by other measures. We had introduced many such measures, and a number of filers did increase. Third-party reporting, mandatory payment by check over a certain amount. All those are measures which increase the number of filers.
The RBI has also noted in its report that they have printed 23.8 billion notes at the cost of 8,000 crore rupees. Now, this is also, demonetization has also brought down the revenue of the RBI, and they've noted that the credit uptake of PSUs has not returned. Do you believe all of this is a reaction to demonetization?
Of course. Go back and read one of the columns I wrote then. I had estimated the cost of printing. I'd estimated the cost to customers who lost incomes, who had to borrow money. I estimated the loss to the RBI in terms of RBI's income. I mean, demonetization has exacted a huge cost on India's economy and India's institutions and the Indian people. Over 100 lives were lost. 15 crore daily wage earners on whom depend 45 crore people in this country did not have wages or income for nearly 8 weeks. They had to borrow money to survive. Now, all that cost is inestimable, and the government doesn't care. It spent 8,000 crore on printing new notes. It would have spent a very large amount on destroying the old notes. RBI lost revenue. Even that calculation will reach a staggering figure. But what about the cost to the public? What about the cost to the average bank customer who lost his money, who lost his income?
Well, I'm being told that the actual number of the cost of printing of notes was closer to 12,877 because it was 8,000 crore rupees in the first tranche and a little over 4,000 crore rupees in the second tranche. But if we actually focus on the three purposes that were listed out by the Prime Minister when he announced demonetization back in 2016, it was first of all to remove black money, to bring down terror financing, and to bring down counterfeit currency. Have we achieved partially even any of these three?
Yes. Has any one of them been achieved?
Yes.
Has any one been achieved? All right, we'll start with one by one. Has black money been wiped out? What is the source of funding of elections today? What is the source of funding of political rallies? What is the source of funding of yatras? What about the cash seizures made by the Income Tax Department in the last year and a half? In Tamil Nadu, in Mumbai, in Delhi, in Punjab, huge amounts of cash have been seized. Now, is that black money or white money? So black money has not been wiped out. Hordes of black money have been seized. The second one about terrorist financing. In fact, look at the numbers on J&K alone. The number of incidents have gone up. The number of infiltrations have gone up. The number of militants killed has gone up, the number of security personnel who lost their lives has gone up, and the number of civilian casualties has gone up. So violence has increased, which means terrorism is more intense today. And if there is financing of terrorism, how is it done? It was done then by black money. It is being done now by black money. I'm sure nobody in government is saying that the terrorists are being financed by digital transaction money. And the third one is counterfeit currency. A few days after demonetization, counterfeit currency was detected, and counterfeit currency is being detected. Only, I think, a month and a half ago, counterfeit currency was detected in Coimbatore. 2,000 rupee notes, 500 rupee notes, counterfeit notes. And in fact, one of the officers said, counterfeiting has become so sophisticated that we can barely distinguish between a genuine note and a counterfeit note. Just go back and look at the archives of newspapers. You will find that report. Therefore, none of the objectives was achieved because none of the objectives was achievable through demonetization. It was a completely wrong policy instrument. It was brought about, according to me, to facilitate people to launder their money. What has happened is, out of 15,42,000 crore,
Yes.
if 15,31,000 crore or so is returned to the Reserve Bank, The obvious conclusion is a large amount of black money was laundered through the money exchange mechanism put in the wake of demonetization. People had to only stand in queue and take their money and exchange it.
But Mr. Chidambaram, the government also argues at this point that now we will scrutinize every single bank account. We'll find out who in fact put in money that was not accounted for, and we will make them pay tax on that money, or we will investigate and then prosecute those people. Do you not believe this is a valid way to find out who laundered money into the system?
The same thing could have been done by other means. All right, let's take the government's argument at face value. They say 18 lakh notices have been sent. Surely not 18 lakh notices have been sent in cases where there's black money. It's a suspicion of black money. That suspicion is to be first established through an investigation and adjudication. I ask you, does the Income Tax Department have the capacity to process 18 lakh notices, replies and cases? It will take years before they process these 18 lakh cases. And assuming that assessing officers in each case pass an adjudication order, it will be taken up in appeal, and a further appeal to the tribunal, and a further appeal to the High Court and Supreme Court. So let's the government not count its chicken before they are hatched. It will take years before these 18 lakh notices are resolved. And at the end of it, what may you get? You may move a mountain to catch a mouse.
But initially,
and by the way,
yes,
even after thorough investigation, it is possible that a significant part of black money would escape the investigation and the adjudication, isn't it? The chances are that the guy may get away. What is the guarantee that every single case will be detected and adjudicated?
Well, allow me to play devil's advocate here, Mr. Chidambaram. The government would also argue that you had 10 years where you could have done something about black money and counterfeit currency and terrorism, but you didn't take any steps at all. You didn't have a solution for the problem, and now you're criticizing the solution that the government has offered.
Yeah, you are. You're not playing devil's advocate. You're playing the BJP's advocate. So let's answer the question. Now, the Reserve Bank said that the extent of counterfeit currency is infinitesimal, something, if I remember right, 0.03%. And at the end of the exercise, the Reserve Bank will give out the amount of counterfeit currency detected. It will be about 0.03%. Now, how did 0.03% come about? Is it because previous governments did nothing? Previous governments also introduced new security features in the currencies they printed, changed the color, changed the thread, changed the invisible watermark, and tightened the currency printing process so that counterfeiting became difficult and counterfeiting was reduced to 0.03%. Now that is done by all previous governments, including Mr. Vajpayee's government, which must have printed currency. Now, as far as black money is concerned, are you saying in the 10 years of UPA, there was no raids at all, no seizures of currency, no seizures of hoards of currency? Just ask the Income Tax Department to give you numbers about how many seizures were effected, how much currency was seized, how many prosecutions were launched. They'll give you the numbers. You'll get it in RTI. I don't remember the numbers offhand, but they used to report it every month to the finance minister. So seizures took place, currency was seized, adjudications did take place, and prosecutions did take place. So to say that the previous government did nothing, and only, it's like saying that the first strong, potent policy instrument was discovered on 8th of November 2016.
Mr. Chidambaram, the estimate while demonetization was brought in was that 3 lakh crore rupees will not come back into the system, and this 3 lakh crore rupees will in fact be the profit to the government. We now find out that that number is close to 10,000 crore rupees.
I tweeted on it this morning.
Yes, and the 10,000 crore rupees won't even cover the cost of printing fresh money. Do you believe that perhaps the people who were planning it, and we still don't know who was planning it and who were the economists who advised the Prime Minister in this case, Was it miscalculation? Was it just ill
I
thought?
don't think.
Or was it a conspiracy?
I don't think any self-respecting economist will own up to advising the government on demonetization. It must have been some quack who advised the government on demonetization. It's clear that the chief economic advisor, Dr. Arvind Subramaniam, was not in the know. It is clear that the RBI was told to make the recommendation only on the previous day, 7th of November. It is also fairly clear that the finance minister was taken into confidence only a couple of days before demonetization. Not to speak of the cabinet. Cabinet was completely in the dark until they saw the Prime Minister go on television and make the announcement while they were sitting in the cabinet room. I don't think anybody, all right, demonetization has been done, good, bad. Why doesn't somebody come up front and say?
But Mr.
And I assume there are
wouldn't
enough honest
advance
people who make
notice
mistakes.
have given
Why doesn't
people the
somebody come up
opportunity
front and say?
to prepare for the move? The government's argument is that we couldn't have given anybody advance notice because people would have siphoned off the money.
Nothing.
People would have made arrangements.
Nothing would have happened. I'll tell you. I'll tell you how to do it. No, nothing would have happened. I'll tell you how to do it. Simply, I would not have done demonetization. So let's make that clear. But if you were doing demonetization, you should have asked the banks to close down completely on Saturday and Sunday. Most banks are closed, and told people that they can exchange their money beginning on a Monday. Nothing could have happened on Saturday, Sunday. There would have been no transactions. Nobody would have taken money. Nobody would have given money if they knew that the currency will be invalid beginning Monday. Isn't it? So there are ways of doing it. But even foolish things can be done better. It is a foolish decision. One should not have attempted it at all. But even if we were doing such a foolish thing, there was a way to do it rather than make crores and crores of people stand in queue in rain and shine, and over 100 lives were lost.
But Mr.
What
Chidambaram,
kind of a
let's look
message
at
did that send
let's look at
across
the
the world?
economic indicators. The GDP is healthy at this point. The stock market is healthier than it has ever been. A lot of the economic indicators show us that our economy is doing well. So would it be very hard to say that in the long term, this might be good for us, and so we should give the government more time? Are you willing to give the government more time?
Certainly not. Certainly not. You are being selective in your choice of indicators. The GDP is growing at a rate slower than the rate in UPA 2 and much slower than the rate in UPA 1. The potential must be gauged by the rate achieved in UPA 1, and the GDP is growing at least 1% lower than the UPA 1's growth rate. So there's a potential growth which has not been achieved, and that means a huge loss to the country. Number two. Now, you mentioned about the stock market. Now, when did the stock market, the Sensex and the Nifty, become an indicator of overall economic health? At best, it's an indicator of the health of, say, 300, 400 companies whose stocks are actively traded on the stock market. The correct indicator is the fiscal deficit. And I dare say that this year they may not be able to achieve the target of 3.3% which they've set for themselves. They are falling short in GST collection by 10,000 crore a month. Maybe they will make it up, I don't know. But it is difficult to achieve the target of 3.3. Take the current account deficit.
Yes,
Last year ended with about 1.9. This year, I think it will certainly cross 2%, and economists say it may even touch 2.5%. Let's take an average. Suppose it turns out to be 2.2%, 2.3%. Yes. That's a worsening of the current account deficit. The rupee is depreciating, interest rates are high, and there's no guarantee that the RBI will not raise the interest rate again. Exports are negative. Faye, Look at the figures of export for the last 4 years. We touched a peak of $315 billion in March 2014. We have not crossed that peak in the last 4 years. I don't know what the fifth year will turn out to be. We have not crossed that peak in 4 years. And what about the credit squeeze? Credit squeeze for SMEs. Look at the credit growth. It's about 4.5% to industry. And within industry to SMEs, it's barely 1.5%. And where are the jobs? So I can give you a dozen indicators which points to a economy which is in very poor health. And don't be dazzled by this GDP number.
All right. Mr. Chidambaram, many thanks for joining us on Mirror Now live at 9 p.m. to discuss the effects of demonetization. Of course, given where fuel prices are and the taxation that's being collected on fuel, it's perhaps possible that the tax target, revenue target numbers of the government might be met, or partially at least, from what is being collected on fuel. But we will watch these indicators even more closely. But this is where we are right now. The RBI, the report from the RBI that points out that we actually walked away with a loss on demonetization as far as the currency is concerned. Former Finance Minister Chidambaram speaking directly to Mirror Now at prime time at 9 p.m. Let me bring in my panel right now. Syed Zafar Islam for the BJP, Shantanu Gupta is an author, Dr. Ajay Dua is the former Commerce Secretary, Akash Jindal is an economist, and Tamal Bandyopadhyay is a very senior journalist. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Zafar Islam, I'll start with you. You heard Mr. Chidambaram's arguments. Do you have a rebuttal for it?
See, I heard partly about Mr. Chidambaram's interview, which you were interviewing. I have not heard him entirely, but let me tell you, see, the Congress, all Congress leaders are speaking the same language, but the truth is something else. First of all, this one initiative of the Honorable Prime Minister has achieved many things, has helped him achieve many objectives of the government of the day.
Which are?
And the demonetization was important purely because the deep-rooted corruption in the system, which was, and I must say, the Mr. Chidambaram, who you were interviewing, were the real, these are the people who are real architect of creating black money in the system. See his track record, number of transactions involved, and his son is involved in all the illegal transactions.
Zafar Islam, you said it achieved many aims of the government. Can you be specific what those aims, please?
Likewise, No, I'm coming back to it. So I'm saying likewise, since you are referring to Mr. Chidambaram, otherwise I wouldn't have spoken about him. So likewise, there are many people who are doing illegal transaction, and that's why it was important for us to take for the Honorable Prime Minister to take such initiative, because what it was needed is a political will, which he has demonstrated, because it's not a tough, it was very tough call.
No, Zafar Islam, hang on, let me focus this conversation, because we run the risk benefits.
Let me now tell you what are the benefits. Let me tell you what were the benefits. First of all, let me give you one statistics. 1.5 lakh people deposited 3.3 crore each, or slightly more, and 1.1 crore people deposited 5 lakh plus amount. Means put together 1.2 crore people, 1.1 crore people.
But Mr. Islam, where are you getting these figures from? The RBI hasn't announced them. The IT department hasn't announced them. We've not got any official sources on these figures. Where are these figures from that you're announcing?
The Finance Minister has spoken about it. I think you should go back and see what the Finance Minister has spoken earlier, Faye. These are figures I am quoting what the Honorable Finance Minister, Mr. Jaitley, has spoken in the past after the demonetization. So I am not giving some number on my own. It's something which is already in public domain. Maybe you have not been able to refer that. All I am saying, 10 lakh crore from 1.11 crore people. What that does suggest? That suggests that, and how many people were filing returns? There were many people who were not filing returns but had a lot of cash available with them, and they were doing all illegal transactions.
Okay, fair enough. Secondly, but Mr. Islam, have we named these people? Have you prosecuted these people? Have these people gone to jail? Have they been required to now pay fines on the money?
Let me just complete. Let me at least give me 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes, and then you can ask as many questions. All I'm saying that as a consequence of that, There are many accounts which had seen suddenly large deposit of cash is being investigated by the agents, by the income tax department. Secondly, there were so many shell companies, more than 3 lakh shell companies, which were actually being used for all illegal transactions. That has been knocked off from the register of companies. That is important, because third thing, which is that
these are two. I have to bring in the rest of my panel, Mr. Islam. This is turning into a monologue, but allow me to bring in the rest of my panel. I want to point out to my panel that when demonetization was announced, it was announced with 3 main goals that the Prime Minister himself announced on that night. Goal number 1, to reduce the amount of black money in the system or eradicate black money completely. Goal number 2, to cut funding to terror organizations and reduce the terrorism or the instances of terror attacks in the country. And goal number 3 was to reduce the counterfeit currency and eliminate it from the system. Today we have found out, from a currency point of view, the 3 lakh crore rupees that we thought we were going to make as a profit never happened. So have we achieved the other goals? That's my question. Deputy Sabad, Akash Jindal, have we achieved those goals?
Can I just respond?
No, let me bring in the rest of the panel. I know you'll want to rebut. 1 second, Zafar Islam. Akash Jindal, please.
No, but this question,
I have waited for half an hour.
No, Akash Jindal, please. Akash Jindal.
I have waited for half an hour. Please allow me to speak. Please allow me to speak. You have got your opportunity. Please allow me to speak, sir. Yes, sir. My reply would surprise a few. So it's my humble request to everybody to first... so it's my humble request to everybody to please not to interrupt when I speak. See, according to me, I seriously feel that yes, the black money elimination target has been achieved up to a lot extent. Because what happens is 99.3% money coming back to the bank itself shows that the black money elimination target has been achieved. How it has been achieved? Till that time, that money was lying up in suitcases, pillow covers.
No, but black has become white, Zafar.
Almiraj at home. Just a minute. Please allow me to speak. Please allow me to clarify. Now, what happens is, I'm not saying the entire money which was lying at households was
This
black,
is turning out to be a monologue. I'm afraid other panelists cannot go on waiting incessantly.
Please allow me to speak, sir. So what was happening was, if you allow me to speak, then your turn would come, sir. If you keep on interrupting, how would your turn come? So now what happened was, that money came to the banks. Now, money once it came to the banks, now that money is it was somebody else, sir. Please.
No, 1 second, gentlemen, please, gentlemen, 1 second. Akash Jindal, my question to you was, do you believe those targets have been met? Let me just go around to the entire panel so everybody feels that they've had a chance to speak. Dr. Dua, do you believe the targets? Do you believe demonetization was a success?
No, I'm fairly categorical about it, because right from the beginning it was becoming apparent to the government as well that when the cash started coming in large numbers to the banks, that probably the objective of black money checking in wasn't being achieved. And the goalposts, the government then thereafter kept changing, including bringing in the big guns of the government to talk about, saying one of our goals was to bring higher level of digitization in the economy. All those were new goalposts, but the original 3, I am afraid, those haven't been achieved. But the government must be given credit for the fact that post-demonetization, what has happened, the government may have planned it, it may have been intended or not, but certainly compliance with tax matters, taxation issues has improved post-demonetization. What probably demonetization achieved was a fear, put a fear in the minds of people that they cannot continue to hold large sums of money. And that's been reflected by the number of assessees, income, the tax collected from them, as well as the reluctance which we saw in the initial periods on people joining the GST network, because they said once we get into the GST network, we will also probably come into the income tax network. So I think the biggest gain of demonetization, if we have to identify one, it is better tax compliance, not bringing down the stock of black money which existed at that point of time. And
Same,
as you
same
very
question,
rightly said
same
a little
question
while
to
ago,
Tamal
in fact, it
Bandyopadhyay as well.
facilitated
Yes.
that money becoming white.
Yes, same question to Tamal Bandyopadhyay. Do you believe demonetization was any sort of success, Tamal?
Yeah, I just want to give you a little perspective. First of all, I am not really sure why you are discussing this, because what has changed between last RBI annual report and this report? August 2017 report said 99% has come back to the system, and August 2018 report saying 99.3%. So it could not have gone down, it could only go up. I understand, or I believe there is some money were stashed in Nepal, something. Indian central government was in continuous touch with the Nepal central government, and they have sorted out this, and that's how it is. So now if you see in Indian context, this is the third demonetization. Now has any of them succeeded in terms of, if you say that what kind of money has come back? None of them, and this is the worst of the three, because 1946 I think 144 crore was demonetized, 135 crore came back when C.D. Deshmukh was the RBI governor. 1978 I.G. Patel was the governor, 86% of the money came back, and this time 99.3% of the came back. So if our expectation was that people are actually will, hoarding money and they will destroy the money, those kind of stories were there, that the money bags floating in the ocean, or people are burning. This not because people have become much smarter. And you also had that PMJDY crores of accounts, which many of the crores of account holders were bought by people who had money, and they have actually turned it white, because up to 2.5 lakh or 2 lakh no question was asked. So that's the part. If you are asking the money coming back and on, no. But I think there are some incidental benefits. One of them is certainly what this gentleman spoke about, maybe people's fear in people's mind, and some of the professionals, etc., who were not complying, now they have started to complying, so the tax base is going up. Second part is the greater degree of financialization. More money has, and of course that you need to, in the context of RERA and other Benami Act, so that people are investing
Tamal,
money.
Could that
in
have been
mutual fund,
achieved some
people
other
getting money
way
into
instead
the
of
stock
shocking the
market, so on and
system,
so forth? So
losing
greater degree of
GDP
financialization has
and
come.
the loss of 100 citizens?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Right, I'll come back to you. Shantanu Gupta, your opening statement, do you believe demonetization was any sort of success, part success, full success?
I think Faye, demonetization was part of a financial discipline which include demonetization, Benami Property Act, RERA, IBC, fugitive offender. So I think when Mr. Chidambaram talks about three things, black money, terror and counterfeit, his arguments are very weak. So on black money, though 3 lakh, we don't have a gain of 3 lakh rupees, 3 lakh crore rupees, but we can track exactly as Zafar Islam said. Now the ITO department. And Mr. Chidambaram only gave the argument that we don't have the capacity, the ITO doesn't have the capacity to go after these 18 lakh people. That's not an argument, right? And the shell companies are closed. On terror outfits, the only argument Mr. Chidambaram gave that now the more number of terrorists are getting killed. So maybe they are getting tracked because their transaction is getting tracked. The number of Naxal districts have reduced. And counterfeit currency, the only argument he gave, the next day that counterfeit, the next month the counterfeit currency was coming. But now we have to wait for the IB report that what is the amount of counter currency. And as everybody said, now there is a far more better discipline in the system. There is a larger tax base, there's a far more bigger digitized economy in the country. So there are benefits.
Okay, so what you effectively did is that you rebutted everything that Mr. Chidambaram said. You haven't listed out any benefits of your own. But here are my rebuttals, gentlemen, to what you just put forward.
Because
if you are saying
the whole discussion was on Chidambaram's, the whole discussion
the discussion is about the RBI report. Mr. Chidambaram was just placing his Mr. Chidambaram was placing his views. The discussion is on the RBI report.
Just one point. It's very interesting that he is currently being grilled by ED. So I don't know what kind of fair assessment can Mr. Chidambaram give.
Can I make my point?
All right, so let me just put this on record. We are not having a debate about Mr. Chidambaram. We are having a debate about the RBI annual report that came out today that told us 99.3% 99.3% of the money has come back into the system. The question I'm asking was demonetization a success? Now to the points, one second gentlemen, everybody take a breath. Now the points that have been put forward, gentlemen, about tracking money, shell companies, more compliance, could we have done this without losing 100 citizens to this process? Could we have done this in a system that didn't cost us a portion of our GDP?
There is no
Could we have, one second, gentlemen, please allow me to finish speaking. Allow me to finish speaking. Allow me to finish speaking. Could we have done this without the demonetization process? Was there a kinder way to do this so that people weren't distressed like they were? The counterfeit currency, RBI data actually shows us that counterfeit currency has not changed in its percent. It's perhaps exactly the same amount that it was before demonetization. And discipline that we are bringing in, could we have done this without shocking the system like we did? Now I'm opening up the debate to argue the specific points. Dr. Dua, go ahead, please.
I think as an economic measure, probably some merit could be found in the argument about black money and demonetization. But the cost which we ended up paying for it and the gains which we got from it were not commensurate. 100 lives you mentioned, GDP loss, which everybody knows about. The dislocation was at the lower end of to people at the lower end of the economy, small industry, labor force, the people dependent upon wages for their survival. That was too huge a price which we had to pay.
Yes.
For whatever little achievement which we had, it may be in terms of the tax base widening, it may be increased to some extent, increased digitization. What I think was possible to do was to make better preparation, far better preparations, restocking the Reserve Bank, at least the vaults of the Reserve Bank, with new currency much more in advance. But just the very fear that the thing will leak out, I think only because of the administrative inability to handle a measure as large as this caused a disruption in the economy which cannot be justified, even if it were one life, leave alone 100-odd lives which we saw of people standing in the queues, whether it was in the heat somewhere, whether it was in the cold.
Yes. So here's my counter question to the panel right now. If we're saying that money has come into the system and this is good because we can now track the money, my question to you is this: how many of these people who brought their black money to the bank and changed it magically to white money have we found out, have we prosecuted, have we fined, or have we pointed out in any way? Akash Jindal, go ahead, please.
I was not allowed to complete my point. So firstly, my point which was left was the money is now monitored money. The money is now scanned money. Every bank account has a KYC, every bank account has a PAN card, many of the bank account has Aadhaar card. So now the regulator, the income tax or ED, they know where the money is, they can investigate into the money. Second thing, I would segregate this into two. One is the benefit of demonetization, the concept of demonetization. Let me tell you, I seriously believe concept of demonetization was not bad. Targets up to a certain extent have been achieved, but the implementation, yes, Faye, you are very right.
Targets that you know, gentlemen, let me point out to you, you all keep saying targets have been achieved. What target has been achieved? Give me hard data. What target has been achieved? I gave you numbers, now you give me numbers.
I'm giving you data. I'm giving you data. I'm giving you data. What happened was, post demonetization, the number of income tax returns have increased. Second data
but has the amount increased?
Post demonetization, because of follow-up action. Just a moment. Now, what happened is, after that, what has happened is, because of the follow-up action of the government, where they have capped the cash transaction up to a certain amount, where they have said beyond a certain amount without PAN card you can't track, without Aadhaar card
they could have done that anyway, Akash Jindal.
Clear-cut fear in the minds of people who were, pardon? No,
they could have capped a cash amount anyway.
As far as implementation is concerned, the government, the implementation was faulty. the government and RBI was
So
not
I'm
ready
not
with
saying,
new currency, but
you
that
see,
was not the
Akash,
fault of
we've had this
demonetization.
conversation,
That was
one
the
second,
fault
we've had
that
this
they were not
conversation too many
ready
times
with
to
new
be
currency.
rating at this point the idea that was demonetization.
Yeah.
I think that conversation is completely irrelevant. It's been nearly 2 years and there's no point talking about the idea. The idea,
they kept on
it has no
frequently
merit at this
changing the
point to have
regulations
that
also.
conversation. We are talking about the hardcore number impact that it had on our lives. Now, as citizens, we remember what it was like. We remember not having cash, senior citizens standing in line, people having heart attacks, weddings being cancelled, people losing their jobs, daily wage laborers who were not paid, people who were being sent away from construction sites because they couldn't be paid. Now, all of this happened. And we remember that it happened. The question that we're asking today was, what was the concrete advantage? And none of you have been able to give me a concrete advantage that could not have been achieved any other way. What did this process achieve? RERA and GST and all of these other things could have been done without demonetization. Why did we need demonetization? Zafar Islam has his hand up. Mr. Islam, please tell me, who advised the Prime Minister? Who were the economists who were in the know? Who were the economists who wrote this, who researched this paper and said that this was a good idea? We haven't been told 2 years in who were the advisors on this process.
Well, Faye, I think there is something which this question needs to be posed to finance minister or somebody in PMO, but because I will not know and I will never be able to know who are the people who are advising on it. So I think this question, and rather you need not even ask any panelist this question. Away from that, let me respond to the concern you have, and I think it is important for us to respond to that question. First of all, this is why I said this is important, because if you really targeting the black money and the rampant corruption which was there in the system, you need to take a very different kind of a decision which can shake the people who are holding black money, who are holding cash and illegal
Mr. Islam,
money.
I'm going to
And that is
interrupt you.
something
Forgive me. I'm really sorry. I'm going to interrupt you, but you're doing it again. You're talking about the merits of making such a big decision. I'm not talking about the merits of, oh, we were so brave that we made the decision.
If you want to speak, then you can keep on speaking then.
You are not answering my question. What was the concrete benefit of demonetization?
You are not allowing me to respond. Even earlier also you interrupted me. If you have asked one question, at least allow people to respond. All I am saying that, see, people are talking about GDP had come off. Yes, GDP had come off because temporarily there was a disruption in the economy. The consumption has come off, but people had postponed their decisions, so there was less consumption, and that's why you had seen a dip in GDP. But in terms of tax collection, in terms of tax widening tax base, did you see those numbers? 18% tax has been collected. There you are asking about who are the people who are being investigated. Income tax department is investigating more than 2 lakh people, and there will be liabilities, and those people will have to pay liabilities with penalty and the huge income for the government. But those people who are talking about that we were expecting that entire money will not come into the system, I think they do not understand economy at all, and that's why, like a knave, they will speak make such a statement. Because if we are announce a demonetization scheme, we are expecting the people will deposit, and we will know the source, we will know the people who have actually their identity, and then we can find out the source. As I said,
okay. So, Mr. Islam, when is that likely to happen? This finding out the identity and prosecuting people for hiding money from the government, when is that likely to happen? How long do you think it's going to take?
See, the process, the process is on, and I think soon, like you today, you know how much money had come. And people were earlier talking that how long it will take. Entire process takes its time. It's a gigantic
rebuttal from Dr. Ajay Dua, please.
Being investigated.
Rebuttal from Dr. Ajay Dua, please.
Yes, you will soon have that clarity as well.
Dr. Dua.
I think the process of recovering the money by way of taxation got compromised right in the beginning when we found people who had accounts, dormant accounts or no money in it, suddenly started queuing up and paying up to 2.5 lakh rupees, the amount which was allowed to be put. They were certainly doing it on somebody else's behalf. So that money actually, as was pointed out earlier by you, is black money which got converted into white. So I would consider that as a pilferage or a leakage from the stock of black money which was around. Thereafter, the number of notices, etc., certainly have gone up. Probably many more will need to go, but reaching their finalization would take a long time, because the due process of law has to be followed within the department and the appellate process. I was just coming to another issue, that the question of did corruption come down after demonetization? It is my word against yours, government's word against somebody else's. But we have to see, did the money which got used in the provincial elections post demonetization, did that come down? It doesn't look like. The elections which were held post that were in the state of Gujarat. Rampant amount of money was seized there by the tax department. Same thing happened in the Punjab, and much more was seized in the recently held Karnataka elections. So, and these are indicators that a fair amount of black money and corrupt money which has been made through corrupt means continues to exist despite their monetization and the huge costs which we have paid for it.
All right, we've run out of time, but I just want to put some data on the table for my viewers at this point. This is where we are. There were 3 targets for demonetization: black money, reduction of terrorism and terror funding, and finally counterfeit currency. Let's look at each of them. Black money, if we consider black money, the RBI data, and this is from the RBI, of 99.3%, plus more money expected from some banks and from Nepal. That money might go down even further, shows us that the black money that we thought existed in the system has now found its way into the banks. It's up to the government now to find out who these people are and prosecute them. So far, we haven't seen that prosecution happen. If the prosecution doesn't happen, it actually means that we allowed people to whitewash their money and turn it from black to white without any sort of consequence. The second point of terrorism. According to the MOS defense, 2 lower house in parliament, a record 15 army personnel, 12 BSF personnel were lost in battle casualties in 2018 alone in Kashmir. Civilian casualties or civilian deaths were 28, double the figure of 2017. So some of those indicators are still quite grim. Finally, counterfeit currency. According to the RBI, in this very report, fake notes in the 500 and 1,000 denomination were at about 59.7%, and they are now at about 59.6%. So demonetization has made little or no difference. What is even worse is that the so-called profit that we might have made is close to 10,000 crore rupees. We were expecting 3 lakh crore rupees. And it turns out that this 10,000 crore rupees doesn't even cover the 12,000 crore rupees we might have spent printing the money and making new notes. So where does that leave us? And we haven't gotten into what it costed us in jobs, what it costed us in GDP, what it costed us in business, what it costed us to simply have an economy that was not circulating for several days. Remember, demonetization happened. Then they discovered that the new note doesn't fit in the ATM slot, and they had to then rework ATMs. So many wrong decisions were made. RBI kept sending circular after circular. So while we set aside implementation and what happened when it was being implemented, fundamentally, we need to look back at this point and figure out who made these decisions, who was advising the government at this point, and who's going to be accountable for the loss. Thanks for watching.